All right, well, good morning, everybody. Just as a reminder to what Eric just said, this conversation we are going to record and post to our Facebook page. But I want to welcome everybody to our conversation with the candidates. This morning, we're lucky to have the candidates for District 5 and District 6 councilors join us. We have Michael Gallagher, Gary McDougall, John Abbott, and Edward Hancock. So thank you to everybody for joining us. I'm going to get right into it. I'm going to ask each of you just to give a little bio about yourself and why you're running and what you think you can do for the town. We'll start with Michael.
Sure, thanks very much. Michael Gallagher, I've lived in the town of Weymouth for almost 38 years in the same house that years ago. I would have to say that I bring quite a bit to the table. I've got 38 years of experience in the private sector. I've been a small business owner myself. I am a small business owner again now. I spent a number of years on the school committee in the town. I spent 13 years on the school committee. I was the deputy to the mayor and chief of staff. My title was director of administrative services, but my function was deputy to the mayor and chief of staff under Sue Kay in her administration. I subsequently went to North Attleboro to become the town administrator and eventually became the town manager. I retired from there, and I'm now I'm doing a consulting gig, I guess, in North Somerset as the town administrator. So from a knowledge perspective, I'm probably one of the more knowledgeable people that are on the ballot at this point as to how government actually works and how the pieces all work. And I bring a different perspective, having been a small business owner and also worked in the private sector for a number of years.
Thank you, Michael. And we'll move on to Gary.
How you doing, Gary McDougall? I've been in Weymouth for a little over 30 years. My wife is a Weymouth resident for her whole life. I've raised 3 children here. They're all gone through the Weymouth school systems and also part of the charter. I'm a software entrepreneur. Right now, I'm currently the chief technology officer of a software company. I've actually been somebody that's done the whole startup thing and gone through the process of being acquired and all that kind of wonderful stuff that goes along with owning a business and owning and having employees and building technology and going through acquisitions. I'm running for this seat. I ran in 2019. I did very well against an 11-year incumbent, which was a lot of fun, actually. And I'm running for this because I feel that my voice and my experience around an understanding of how business works and how this town really needs to drive innovation and technology into the core to sort of survive in the future. I also feel that I'm somebody that isn't a politician, so I haven't been a part of government, and I think that's an important part of this. And I think, I think is somebody that isn't part of the process and hasn't been living my whole life as a bureaucrat or a part of the politician side of things. I bring a different set of eyes and a different pair of goggles to the table, and I'm somebody that really understands the process. And I've been very plugged into District 5 for many years now, and helping neighbors and working on issues and being a part of the community.
Thank you, Gary. And next up will be John. And just a reminder, if anyone does, to remember to mute your mic, not for the candidates necessarily, but anybody else listening in. John?
All right, sure. Thanks, Dennis. And thank you to the Weymouth Chamber of Commerce for hosting this morning and inviting me. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is John Abbott. My wife, Sarah, and I have lived in South Weymouth for almost 10 years. We're raising our 5 children here and sending them to Weymouth Public Schools. I'm the Director of Business Operations at a nonprofit in Boston, and I have about 20 years working in the nonprofit financial management and financial director positions at various nonprofits in the Boston area. I've served several volunteer positions in town, such as most recently the treasurer of the Hamilton School Parent Council and as a youth sports coach in several leagues for my kids and other kids in the South Weymouth area. One of the main reason I'm running is to stay involved in this town and to make it a better place for me and my kids to grow up. I've spent the last 3 years as the treasurer of the parent council at the Hamilton School and got to know a lot of the people of the Hamilton elementary school district overlaps pretty significantly with the District 6 map. And I've gotten to know people in this town, and it's amazing when you first move to a town, you don't know anybody and you feel like much of an outsider. And now at events that I'm going to, I'm one of those people I was jealous of who seems to know a lot of people and get involved. And so I'm looking for the next step of service and involvement in the town. And I'm hoping my experience in the nonprofit world, managing budgets anywhere of $100 to $200 million projects funded by the US government in the nonprofit world, can translate very well to assisting with the management of the town's budget, assisting with the rollout of lots of new initiatives that the town is planning. The priorities for me in District 6 are getting commercial development built up in Union Point and working with a new master developer and providing oversight to the degree that's possible within the setup of Union Point, and securing funding for the completion of the Columbian Square remodel plan. So there's a plan in place, and if the federal government can get its act together and pass the infrastructure bill, there's funds for that project specifically earmarked there, but it's not enough to complete the project. So we need additional funding, whether that's from the state or the town. And I think that's really important for the businesses in Columbian Square, for the businesses all across the District 6, to show that the town is committed to to improving areas for businesses, for pedestrians, for residents. So that's just a brief little bit about me. Looking forward to speaking with everybody tonight and going over the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And lastly, we have Ed.
Morning. How's everybody doing?
Doing great.
Good. All right. So my name's Edward Hancock. I'm a lifelong resident of Weymouth, a graduate of Weymouth Vocational Technical High School. And my major was structural drafting engineer, and then also with the high school education. And then further on, I enlisted in the United States Navy, serve our country, and did that for 4 years during the Persian Gulf conflict. I'm a veteran, and after honorably discharged, I came out and became a crane operator in local union number 4, the operating engineers. At that time, I was went through the apprenticeship, became a journeyman, and learned the industry of building the buildings and the businesses throughout the Massachusetts and beyond. After that, during that time, I was able to become a police officer appointed for the town of Weymouth. In 1998, I proudly served Weymouth for over 23 and a half years, continuing my service and wanting to be there and serve our community. During that time, I was on the bargaining committees for the Union Police Patrolmen Association. Also, I was a vice president of the union and grievance officer. So I know how to deal with the town situations. Sitting across from Mr. Gallagher, that's proudly here in District 5. We know with many bargaining sessions. So as I moved on and during this time, I actually have a small business with my wife, a dog walking business, but we are a business in town, running that business and keeping things going, and knowing how to work with the people throughout the town. Obviously, my next achievement was I was appointed the chairman of the Weymouth Housing Authority. Just recently, after I retired, I wanted to continue to serve, and was appointed to the Housing Authority. So right now, I'm maintaining the over 407 units of assisted living and keeping the people of the housing under the budget constraints, and learning how to do the ins and outs of dealing with assisting the public and making Weymouth a better place for everybody to live. I'm also an active member of my kids in the youth sports, and keeping them involved in the schooling, and working throughout the community. Throughout my years of service across the town and being a lifelong resident, I pretty much got to know a lot of people in town, and it was a very experience. Even with the Rotary Club, I know there's a lot of business owners that I know through there, and working in the construction field part-time. I get to know all the people and throughout the towns and just throughout my career. My goals for the town, for the business community, is to build up and maintain the income of businesses coming in, especially in Union Point, where we want to make sure that the master developer properly, acquires the right businesses with the catch to make it a premier town thing for Weymouth and South Shore. Again, throughout the time in my service, I've worked with many business owners in their issues and their problems. I want to continue to serve and help maintain the business community and the public for everybody in town, so we can have a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. So before we jump into the questions, my name is Dennis Keohane. I'm the chair of the Weymouth Chamber of Commerce. And we are basically the advocate for the business in Weymouth. So a lot of our questions are going to have to do with that, obviously. And before we jump into the questions, I just wanted to acknowledge and thank our power partner, Coastal Heritage Bank, because without their support, the Weymouth Chamber would not exist. So thank you, Coastal Heritage Bank. So for this question, we're going to start with Gary. And basically, I know a few of you have mentioned it, but the business environment now, what we're hearing from a lot of our members is that really the cost for everything is going up. So the insurance costs, the health insurance costs, the energy costs, pretty much everything. And a lot of businesses struggling to try to come out of COVID and all the challenges that all the businesses face. So my question is, with the current business tax classification in Weymouth, do you think that we're too high, too low, or just right, and why? So that's to Gary to start with.
That's a good question. Thanks. The town did a tax shift a period about, I think it was a year and a half, 2 years ago. I can't remember now. I actually think we're the lowest on the South Shore. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Braintree is $21 and Weymouth is $18, and I think Quincy's $24 commercial tax rate. So it's pretty competitive on the commercial side. I think as far as, the costs and the issues that businesses are dealing with, it's sort of systemic across the nation. I think what the town really needs to do, they got, $17 million for the American Rescue Plan Act, which I think is a vital part of sort of helping out parts of the town and parts of Weymouth. 17 million, and there's another additional 11 million coming in from Norfolk County, which will help as well too. It's a lot of that has to really be put towards helping the businesses, sort of fix some of the infrastructure. Columbian Square is a good piece of this. I believe Columbian Square is going to get some of that money as well. But I do think the current tax rate is probably pretty good. It's very competitive with other towns, and I think it's something that if you're looking at just starting a business or you're looking to maintain your business, Weymouth looks pretty attractive on paper for businesses at this point.
Thank you, Gary. And same question to John.
Sure, thanks. Like Gary mentioned, I think Weymouth's tax rate around $18 for commercial is pretty competitive on the South Shore. I think Hingham is our only bordering town that has a lower rate. And to be honest, Hingham's economic situation is just not super comparable to that of Weymouth. Different towns, different priorities, different home values, different property values. And so I wouldn't necessarily, I don't think that the answer to some of the struggling business issues right now is changing Weymouth's tax rate. I think it's in a good spot. But I think, as Gary mentioned, the town is coming into some significant amounts of money. And while it's important for the town to make some long-term infrastructure and capital improvements with those funds, because they're one-off funds, it doesn't make sense to start programs that then need to be funded annually going forward when those funds won't be available. Some of that can go towards assistance towards our business community. And the mayor has been fairly proactive during the COVID epidemic, helping out the businesses in Weymouth, whether it's a deferral or waiving certain taxes and certain licensing fees. allowing more outdoor seating at restaurants, things like that. There are innovations that we learned that the business community and all of us were forced to adapt because of COVID, that we can keep in place after COVID is over, that will continue to assist the business community. But I think it would be important that a portion of those funds coming in and a portion of the budget going forward goes to business development in the town. You know, we see in some places in the town, businesses are thriving and doing well, and then you'll see certain stretches where it seems as if there's a fair amount of neglect. And I think there needs to be more of a universal approach as opposed to a focus on certain areas in town that get a lot of attention and a lot of improvement, and other areas in town don't get those improvements. For example, in Union Point right now, we've been hearing from residents for basically since the first residents moved in that they want commercial development. They want commercial development in Union Point. They want a supermarket. They want a coffee shop. They want a dry cleaner. And that just hasn't happened. And so I think it's an important area for the town to make sure that businesses like that in our new developments like Union Point, but also in existing storefronts so that we don't have empty storefronts, that they feel that they have a healthy and welcoming climate in Weymouth.
Thank you, John. Ed, same question to you. Do you current tax classification, do you think it's too high, too low, or just right, and why?
I do actually think that the tax classification right now is perfect in Weymouth. They just did the readjustment, like it was stated just about a year and a half ago, and they're lower compared to the other communities around us. You know, a few dollars off. I looked it up and looked at the rates and back and forth, and the last stats, you know, that I was able to acquire, Wayne was at 20.13 per thousand, so $20.13 per thousand on the commercial tax rate. Quincy was at about 25.18. Braintree was like one of the highest, and it's 23. It was either 50, 23.65, remember correctly, for their tax rate. So the only one comparable around us is like Norwell. So we're very attractive to the business community, especially with the developments of the areas around. They talk about the broken windows theory. It's one of the good theories that I learned while I was in the academy. So if you keep the town dressed up and the windows, you know, clean and the storefronts looking good, that the people will want to come, and the attraction to Weymouth is, I think the mayor's doing a great job, and the town council has done a great job maintaining that attraction to Weymouth. Obviously, economic times, COVID, you know, we're doing the best we can. We're still way ahead with the budgetary constraints, and the rainy day fund is still there in case of the rainy day. So I think they're doing a great job on maintaining the budgetary constraints and keeping everything in line. As for the businesses, you know, once the revamp of Columbian Square, that was one of my top priorities. You know, the first will be the public safety part of it, and the hospital traffic from the ambulances and the overflow from the people that need the services, and the additions to all the areas there of the businesses to grow and come in. So Columbian Square would be the perfect you know, scenario to use that money and allocate the funds if we can maintain the taxes. I do believe on some of the places, especially for Union Point, to attract, if we can levy the tax to attract the business to get in there and get that mom and pop store or the corner grocery store or the coffee shop that these people were promised and begging for to get in there, then I'd like to see that happen. Obviously, on the tax break in negotiations, I know that several unions, even to build the property in the commercial residence, that they have a fund that offsets the labor costs and stuff to keep that down for the businesses, to attract the businesses to want to come in and build. So very, very good you know, assets that are out there that we can definitely allocate to, you know, come forward.
Thank you, Ed. Question to you, Michael. Do you think the business tax is too high, too low, or just right, and why?
Thank you. I think that the current tax rate, the current tax classification within the town is probably where it needs to be at the moment. I would not want to be an assessor though, going forward, because there is going to be a very interesting dynamic that's going to happen within the community. The value of residential real estate has gone through the roof. People are bidding up homes here. So that's going to have a natural shift back to the residential, total residential rate, if you will, because of the value of the properties. I don't know what's going on in the commercial sector. I don't have a good feel for what, whether or not commercial real estate is doing the same thing. But certainly the residential real estate is going to make it very interesting to see how that all comes about. We can't overburden the businesses in the community, but we also need to be sure that we allow people to stay in their homes and that we don't have a huge shift to the residential taxpayers that are in the community. And I think that that's going to be very interesting, and not just in Weymouth, but across the Commonwealth. And it'll be kind of fun to watch to see what happens with all of that. But I think the current classification is where it needs to be.
All right, thank you, Michael. And just to point out, it's my duty as the chair of the Weymouth Chamber of Commerce, so that the towns that implemented the shift, the business tax shift, Weymouth's definitely competitive with them, but the towns that don't have the shift, those towns would be less. Like, for example, Rockland is at 1750, Plymouth is at 1635, and Marshfield is 1319. So just wanted to point that out before we jump to the next question. So I know a lot of you have mentioned the Columbian Square, and we didn't really mention too much about the developments on Route 18. So I'm looking for your thoughts on the mayor's recent zoning initiative. Do you think it's a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Do you have a better idea? And so in this one, we're going to start with John Abbott.
Thanks, Dennis. So, I think the zoning changes of a few years ago on the commercial corridor overlays was well-intentioned. The idea was to both provide, residential options, but also mixed use opportunities. So there's commercial development on the first floor, maybe improve the visibility and the way some of our main streets look, whether that's Route 18, 3A, Columbian Street, wherever it is in Weymouth that the rezoning took place. But, I think we all saw the impact. The reality on the ground after those zoning changes of several years ago was that we were getting more and more apartment buildings on the main streets with limited to no commercial first floor space. And it really you talk to anyone in town, our main streets are getting very congested with apartment buildings, and the vast majority of Weymouth residents, while we understand there's a need to increase the tax base, don't want our main streets cluttered with apartment buildings. I abut the apartment building, the senior living facility that's going in where the old miniature golf course was on Route 18. And, it's one of those situations going into it where the neighbors and the town just tries to extract as much as possible from the developer, because we realize there's very little chance of stopping development moving forward. So I think the way to do that, to make the answer, I think the town did a good first step, adjusting the overlay zone recently to make sure that the commercial portion of it is a significant portion of it, reducing the amount of congestion that's allowed. But I think it can go further. I think we can put floor caps on new development in town so that we don't have 6, 7, 8, 9 floor buildings being put up on Main Street, being put up on Washington Street in areas that are, for the most part, residential. So while I think the idea was well-intentioned, the impact has not at all been what the goal was. We're not seeing the commercial development. We're not seeing beautification of the main streets of Weymouth. We're seeing cookie cutter apartment buildings popping up all over town. And that wasn't the intention of it. And that's definitely not what citizens of Weymouth want. And so I think the town has taken a good first step in addressing that issue, but I think we can go farther to make sure that some of the congestion issues that are such a key part, and they lead to issues all over town. They lead to traffic issues. They lead to enrollment issues at the public schools. They lead to public safety issues with the fire department, with the police department. So I think the town can go further with some of these zoning areas to reduce the congestion, reduce some of the high density construction that's been going on since they made the change several years ago.
Thank you, John. Same question to you, Ed.
So on the zoning overlay, I definitely think that it was a good move to appropriate that measure that came in. Being pro-business, I definitely want to be, see the business development. Enough with the apartments, and even with that, the under first floor attraction. If you're going to do a business on the main road, that's usually where the businesses are, and that's why it's commercially zoned for the access and egress. So where the trickle effect of the water and sewer, you're getting and obviously if you have a commercial business, they're not going to drain the water resources like the apartments would be in the residential would. So that being said, that that could be a good answer to develop the appropriate businesses and make it attractive for the more businesses and to fill these vacant lots and along 3A and just still vacant buildings, and to attract something that to come in Washington Street. There's definitely buildings there that can be built up and not affect the residential, overlay where the congestion. But if those main streets and the improvements of Route 18, the widening all the way down to Route 139 in Abington, that's it. Once that's done, it will alleviate. Obviously, it takes time, but there still is a lot of progress that could be done for the businesses, and an attraction for the open. Everybody wants the access and egress and the easy way to do it. So I think that it definitely with the appropriation and the ordinance with the overlay is the correct move.
Thank you, Ed. That same question to you, Michael, your thoughts on the mayor's recent rezoning initiative?
Thank you. I think the rezoning initiative was a great first step, to John's point that he made earlier. I think that the original intent for what the zoning overlay was for didn't really pan out. And I think we've seen the results of all of that. We do need more commercial space along those corridors. That's what it's there for. And I think that this is a good step to try to alleviate some of that congestion that was happening there. We do have issues with our infrastructure, with our water, with our sewer. Those are going to catch up with us if we continue to do the density that we're doing in certain places. And I think that while growth is a good thing for the community, I think it needs to be better controlled. So I think this is a great step to begin that process. And I think it's something that needs to be reviewed and looked at on a regular basis, as opposed to, once every 10 years or so. I think we need to do it more often just to make sure, because things change. Things change on a daily basis, never mind a yearly basis. So I think this is a great place to begin, and I hope to see more of that in the future.
Thank you, Michael. And same question to you, Gary.
Yeah, so I think, the original intention for the overlay district was to sort of take a concept called mixed use and drive commercial space and on the first floor or part of the structure, and with the idea that the zoning could be changed so that we could overlay right on top of existing zoning and then build on top of that some residential homes. And I think one of the problems that this administration had faced early on was they were taking a concept called mixed use, which adds in a lot of commercial real estate, and thought that this would just immediately drive business into the town. And one of the things that I think what was problematic is, I don't know about you folks, but retail is not doing very well. And there's a reason for that. Is because a lot of people, shop online, and You just see the Amazon trucks flying around here. You know what's going on. And I think there was no thought into sort of what would happen if the commercial space didn't get occupied. And now we're seeing the result of that. And so I think what really needs to happen here is a revisit of what this overlay district is for the town, and also what it does for the impact on our infrastructure. I think it's good to have a plan that drives business and helps the community with good businesses and good shops and good restaurants and all those kind of things. I think we want those things. But I'd like to know why these projects aren't getting fulfilled. So you have an apartment complex, for example, in the Landing that's going up from the Dalagus property that's going to have 87 apartments on top of a commercial space that has no leases for any of those yet. And if you look at sort of the leases around town on these projects, none of them are leased. It's very, very few, like one or two, I think, have leased out properties. And you're going to struggle with this on Union Point too. So we have to start thinking in terms of what does this overlay district do for the community on the housing, and what does it do for infrastructure as it pertains to water, sewer. This town is losing quite a bit of water a day to a failing infrastructure, leaky pipes, problematic. Folks in Columbian Square area are very familiar with brown water, and that's because the sewage system and parts of the water table are feeding into each other. So I think I would like to see, like in the technology industry, we always say the first release going out is always the release that's going to have a quick update. You saw the administration do this previously. They lowered the height. I thought that was a good move. I thought that was a very positive direction. But what this overlay district did was it actually introduced problems around each neighborhood. It introduced an amendment which allowed for billboards. And now we've got two communities, or two neighborhoods in the community, I should say, looking at large structures of billboards that they're trying to push back on because they're just lighting up neighborhoods with it. And that's a direct result of the overlay district for allowance of those kind of structures and those kind of things. So we really, as a town council, need to sort of have a little bit more oversight. I'd really like to see why businesses aren't moving into these spaces. Is it cost? Is it rent? Is it sort of space, or are they built out? Do they have the right facilities around it? I know that the project in the Landing, not in Weymouth, but on the other side, doesn't have enough space to have dumpsters for trash removal. These are the kind of things that I think we need to look at for those commercial spaces. And if we're going to build these structures like this, and look at this country has a problem with housing. So I understand and I get that people need to live someplace, right? And the other impact here is cost of this housing. These apartments are very, very expensive, and that drives a different type of individual into these homes. And does the commercial space below it support the people above it? And those are the kind of things to think of. So I'd really like to see the town council revisit maybe annually on these zoning changes and help the business community and help the residents make sure to come to some happy place that both parts of the community can be happy with. And right now it's been a problem throughout the town. As John has mentioned, he's butting up against an area, and some of these are just popping up in areas. And really, as a administration and town council, they have to start looking at these changes that they made many years ago, and maybe they don't quite work anymore. And so we need to kind of do an update or a version update. And they've started to do these things, and that's a positive thing. But I think oversight from the town council on these things needs to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. And just as a follow-up to that, it seems like most of you feel like the tax rate is good where it is. But if we look at Weymouth, and we're really more competing with the towns to the south than towns to the north. So if you look at that, and then I can feel the frustration of everybody with a lot of that empty commercial space. Is there anything specifically that, or any ideas that you have that could attract quality businesses into those spaces? What do you think we need to do to work on that? So for that one, I'm going to start with Ed.
Well, I know for like the Union Point part, the development of those apartments right there on the Parkway, and then they said the commercial retail space. from the professional standpoint, I actually contacted one of the realtors, and they said it's not applicable, it's not feasible with the way they developed it. And they said it's so hard to sell that as a, to get out there and sell it and lease it, or get a business to come in there. It's just not, unless you have like a small little shop or just like a storefront place that somebody can come in and pick up. It's not large enough applicable to, have that type of place. So that's one of the issues up at Union Point. Some of these other new buildings, with the, like say the John's Liquors, that he's going to run that business in the liquor store underneath, as far as is what I know it's supposed to go in there. And, obviously, and then they're going to have all the studio apartments above. So that's going to work and be feasible for that type scenario, because that's the way they designed that building. He wanted to have his business and then make the profit, in case his business slows down or things dry up. So each individual plan has to be assessed and look forward. So it is applicable for a certain type of business to get in there to sell. I think that a problem is definitely, everybody wants the biggest buck, whether it be in commercial realty. Right now, I think we have listed over 2,300 and something retail businesses in town. There's 261 retail stores listed in town. There's 183 professional businesses listed. You get, you're not going to have a contractor, come in and have an industrial contract. They need more space. They need yard space. That's not the type of, business that they're putting out, but they are a business in town. As for restaurants, we have about 115 restaurants listed in town. It'd have to have, obviously the grease pickups, the trash pickups. One of the gentlemen there, Gary, had mentioned, the proper spacing for these areas. For wholesalers and distributors, we have 32, distributors in town. I think the Amazon thing for the base, I don't think that's ever going to come back around, but that would have been great. That would have brought a lot of tax revenue and have a larger business and employment. But I just don't see it coming back around. So that being said, that's my thought.
Thanks, Ed. So same question to you, Michael, as far as what you can do specifically to attract quality businesses to those locations. Any specific ideas on that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've noticed through the years living here is that Weymouth is a pass-through community for the people that are on the South Shore who are going into Boston or heading someplace else. I think we need to make Weymouth a destination, and we need to work with the businesses that are in the community along. And I think one of the things the council could do is take a more active role in economic development for the town, and actually maybe create an economic development subcommittee, really push some of those things to try to attract people into the area. And that should help drive some of the business, some of that commercial space, and maybe get that filled in. It's very difficult to get around sometimes in Weymouth. And the Landing is an example. And I had this discussion with Mayor Kay when I was part of her administration. Weymouth Landing is not a destination, not for me. I live in South Weymouth. I'm not heading to the Landing to actually do anything because I can't get there easily. There's no way for me to get there easily. There's no place for me to park. So we need to take that into consideration as we develop areas. And as development happens, we need to think about those things. Union Point is a real good example of that. We've got all that commercial space that's sitting in Union Point. I drive through there and I just shake my head at what's down there. But I've had conversations with some of the small businesses that are around town about maybe opening something satellite there, and there's no interest, which is pretty sad. And doing anything large in that space is going to be problematic because of the lack of long-term water and sewer for that particular site. So I think those are the areas we need to work on. We need to work on our long-term plan as far as the general plan for the town, the grand plan of what we're doing with all this. We need to make sure that we have proper parking. We need to make sure that we have the ability for people to get there and enjoy wherever they're going, whatever they're going to happen to do in the town, and actually try to market the town as a destination as opposed to just a pass through where people are heading someplace else.
All right, thank you, Michael. And same question to you, Gary.
So to address your question about tax rates and is it too high for Weymouth? Could it be lower? When you look at, you had mentioned Rockland. Rockland is $17 a dollar cheap. But here's what Weymouth offers people that are paying $1 more. The foot traffic, the population, that kind of thing is in Weymouth. Rockland is a very tiny town with not a lot of commercial space. So it's fraction of the size of Weymouth. So you're going to see, as a business owner in Weymouth, a lot more traffic and foot traffic and those kind of things. If you're a retail shop, you're going to see that more. I think the rates are pretty good. So I would say that lowering it's not going to make much of a difference. I'd really like to know why. I don't think it's the tax rate. I think there's something else going on here. Is there something we can do? Sure, we could revisit how these spaces are being created. I think a lot of it has to do with where they are location-wise. And I also like to say my opponent is talking about landing as nobody goes to landing. I disagree with that. I go to El Sarape and there's plenty of restaurants down there. The challenge down there now, and here's how businesses get affected. There's no parking. There's absolutely no parking in the landing right now. And when you build these structures and you build these areas around town, there's no place for people to park, right? I mentioned earlier about the problem that they had with the building on Landing 53, which has no commercial way to pick up trash from dumpsters. Maybe these are issues with some of these commercial spaces. And one thing we could do in this overlay district is require that if you're going to build a structure like this, that you have a lease plan for a business coming in before you build the structure. And if you're going to have a mixed use environment and you're going to have commercial space at the bottom, don't just allow for the build of the building for the apartments, because if the commercial space is going to be empty, what good is that for Weymouth? That's going to be another empty space that people are going to drive by and not see because they probably can't park there, or they probably can't get access to it, or a business won't start up there because they haven't quite figured out the logistics of why that space is not good for them. So I think as a town council, as far as economic development, I think that the administration has been trying to do this. I don't think they've looked hard enough at a success plan around what makes this town attractive. Commercial tax rates aside, I just don't see that the tax rate's the issue here. We've dropped it considerably over the last 4 or 5 years, and it's pretty competitive with other towns. And we offer a little bit more foot traffic, a lot more people. There's almost 60,000 people in this town, and 3 train stations. Michael mentioned the landing. There's a train station in the landing. It's very occupied there in the morning. And so that's a destination for a lot of people. I think this is a unique town. We have several squares, Columbian Square, the Landing, Bicknell. There's several other squares in this town. One of the things the town could do is vitalize the squares and make them destinations by doing things for parking, public transportation, those kind of things. Excuse me. But I think the town squares are really kind of a focal point of the town if we could sort of use those as destinations like they did 50, 60 years ago. I saw pictures of the Landing recently. Everybody went to the Landing to pick their fruit up and their things. Times have changed, but there's no reason why that Landing or the Columbian Square area can't be a place that has vibrant businesses and restaurants and places to go. I'm not necessarily sure retail is the place that people are going to be going towards because the way the world works now, but there's certainly places and businesses that could operate in these commercial spaces that are currently empty. So I think as a team on the town council, there should be some thought into why these overlay rules and zoning has not quite panned out the right way, and there needs to be a revisit of that.
Thank you, Gary. Same question to you, John.
Sure, thanks. So, I don't think we should act as if this is a problem unique to Weymouth. Empty storefronts and difficulty finding commercial tenants in existing structures is it's a suburban, it's a national issue, but it's especially in suburban areas, as Gary's mentioned, as retail goes away and as so many restaurants had a hard time surviving in the pandemic. Just a lot of suburban communities are having a hard time filling existing commercial space. Not quite as much with new commercial space, but it's a challenge everywhere. That being said, the town council's responsibility is Weymouth. So writing it off as a problem everybody's facing you don't have that out. So there are some things that can be done. You can incentivize landlords who hold empty properties, whether it's a short-term tax break to make sure that that properties are filled so that we don't have these empty properties. But I think one of the key things is, and it might be a little bit not directly related to some of the enhancements that we can do to the attractiveness, like Gary mentioned, of our squares. So we, in the southern part of town, we have three main squares. We have Jackson Square, Columbian Square, and the Landing. And there's new development going in those areas, but I think we can make them centers of town. We can make them and beautify those areas. Whether, Weymouth is an old town, and you look at some of the other towns around us and in their town centers, you get that feeling of a quaint old New England town. You don't get that really in too much. You get that from the architecture. You get that from the old buildings. You don't get that from any of the municipal infrastructure in any of these areas. And that's something that I think can bring people together. And you see, and you can bring attractiveness. You can bring more foot traffic. You can bring more people. A lot of people, like was mentioned, if you want to go to a store in the Landing, where do you park? If you want to go to a store in Columbian Square, do you have to budget off 45 minutes of time just to get in and out? If you want to, for me, I live all the way at the bottom of South Weymouth. So North Weymouth isn't much of an option. I'm going to somewhere else if I need to go shopping. Weymouth's a big town. But you go to Jackson Square and there's 12 municipal spots in that little mini parking lot. And then other than that, you have to fend for yourself. There's not a lot of thought to what these commercial centers, what a best case scenario could be, what municipal funding could look like for these areas to beautify them, to make them attractive to pedestrians, make them attractive to the community, make them centers of the community, like they were. Columbian Square was the center of South Weymouth. The Weymouth Landing area was the center of that part of Weymouth. Jackson Square was the center of East Weymouth. And you did your shopping, you did your banking, you did your dry cleaning, you did all of those things in those areas. And that's kind of gone away. And if the town puts the effort to making those areas attractive, making those areas accessible, making those areas affordable, then I think we can change that and start to bring some of these empty commercial spaces back with better businesses for the residential population of Weymouth, but also increase opportunities for the businesses themselves.
Could I have a point on that? If I could just add to that, because John just reminded me of something. I think Jackson Square is being sort of updated, and I think it's really important. But one thing that dawned on me recently was all this development that's going on, there's been no consideration around parking. That what the town could do is buy up a parcel or two in each one of these squares. I know Columbian actually has a nice parking lot in the back. So I think, I think that's been solved there, which is good. And I think it's just a matter of fixing some of those infrastructure issues. But Jackson Square is a great example. Like I was in there for a Christmas thing about a year, well, before COVID, like everybody else, right? And boy, it was hard to park. I couldn't find a spot anywhere. So what the town could do is, as John pointed out, and I think this is kind of essential, is look at these squares, Jackson, Columbian, and like John, I don't go to North Weymouth too often. It's part of the area that I always joke with my friends who live in North Weymouth. You live in another country, right? But there could be a plan in place to just buy parcels and co-join them and make public parking for Weymouth residents so that they could get to these stores. And maybe this is a big problem. When you look at the Landing, I see why some of these buildings are empty. You just can't park. Try parking in the Landing. It's impossible. it's virtually impossible. So I just wanted to make that point. I think that's something the town could do.
Thank you, Gary. And just to point out a concern, a little bit of concern for the chamber is that we certainly appreciate, I know there was a recent decrease in the shift for the business taxes, but we look at businesses like Article 15 Brewery, and they shifted to Rockland, and I don't know if it specifically is a tax issue, but as a chamber, we get concerned when a viable business like that shifts to another town. So just wanted to point that out. And we're running out of time a little bit. So I know pretty much everybody has touched on Columbian Square. I know somebody mentioned the Columbian Square remodel plan. So I'd like to get everybody's opinion on Columbian Square, what additionally can be done, a time frame to address the issues there. We don't have a whole lot of time, so try to keep everybody to about 3 minutes. And for this one, we'll start with Michael.
Thank you. Columbian Square is, well, I happen to live in South Weymouth. Well, we all live in South Weymouth, but Columbian Square is truly problematic. It has been for a number of years. I know at one point when the whole development was happening at the air base that's now Union Point, part of the revenue from all of that was supposed to go toward the revamping of Columbian Square. Whatever happened with that, where that ever wound up, I have not been able to follow the whole follow the money there. But that was originally in the plan, and there needed to be something done there. The problem you have is if you eliminate the angle parking up there, now you're going to impact some of the businesses that are there that actually utilize that angle parking. At one point, there was a discussion about putting a rotary in there. There was discussion about putting signaling in there. Something needs to happen there quickly. You've got a lot of traffic that flows through there on a daily basis. I drive through there twice a day, going to and from Somerset now, and I find it difficult, if not impossible, sometimes to get through there without running into issues with somebody backing out, not seeing you, or people trying to get across the intersection to go from Rockland to heading toward Braintree or vice versa. I think that needs to be taken care of sooner rather than later, but we need to do it in a way that we don't impact the businesses that are in that particular area that rely on some of the parking that are in front of them.
Thank you, Michael. Same question to you, Gary, regarding Columbian Square.
So, and I feel like I'm there almost every day. Couple things. The 900-pound gorilla in the room is the reason why there's traffic in Columbian Square is because we have a hospital that is growing and is over the last 15 years went from sort of a small little, side hospital to a Partners Health, massive Dana-Farber, huge. So it's contributing a considerable amount of traffic and wear and tear on the town and the infrastructure. One thing that I just don't see, and I don't understand why this isn't happening. I've asked many times and people sort of, have kind of alluded to the fact that we really can't bring South Shore Hospital to the table, but they pay a pilot payment every year. It's optional because they're a nonprofit, but really it would be nice to find out what they could do to help with some of that. They haven't really been forthright in some of their development and the things that they're doing. And they're contributing a considerable amount of headache to the businesses in the area, because what you end up having to do is you have sort of a massive amount of traffic right through past the Cameo and creating an influx of problems. And I think what the town needs to do is get to the table with South Shore and put some sort of mitigation strategy together to kind of ease some of that traffic with South Shore to figure it out. I don't know what that means, but I just feel like there's not been enough there. The other part of this is Mr. Gallagher had pointed out there's, what happened to the money? Well, the developer went out of business, so the money went away. Well, he's actually in a lawsuit right now, and also that I won't get into that mess. But the problem with it is that we do have money coming in for Columbia, so the money is earmarked to fix that, and there is a series of money coming from the American Rescue Plan Act, which is going to directly go right to Columbian Square. So we are going to see some revitalization and some infrastructure upgrades there. I actually think what John was saying earlier is important, is there needs to be a little bit of a plan around what goes in there. Some of the buildings there are a lot older. I see there's a nice project going in with the old bank is. It changed hands 4 or 5 times. I can't remember the last bank name that was there. Was it Bank of Boston and then, South Shore Bank at one point? That's being redone and remodeled. A proposal on the table that, and below all that has some nice commercial space. But I think there needs to be an overall master plan for Columbian Square. Like the community needs to come together on that and having a master plan to say, this is what the community needs and the neighbors need around that area. Right now, it's sort of be a little ad hoc. We're going to fix the lights. We're going to put a stop sign in. But working with South Shore Hospital to figure out what some mitigation strategy, having a master plan, and looking at the overall space in general and saying where can we make improvements as a town to drive people to that square to spend money. That's the real issue here. And so it's planning. It's all about planning and having a plan. And I think that I'm a proponent of making sure you have a plan before you just start spending money and doing things.
Thank you, Gary. Same question to you, John. Your thoughts on Columbian Square?
Sure. So Columbian Square is the commercial and the sort of the lifeline of South Weymouth. It's where it all comes together in the old New England town square. And as I mentioned before, it's past the design phase. There is a plan for a signalized intersection, turn lanes, removal of the angled parking, adding additional parking in other areas to make up for that loss. And that plan was worked on by the administration. It had input from business members within Columbian Square and limited support from business members in Columbian Square, or temporary, or initial support anyways. And I can't remember the exact price tag, but it's somewhere between $8 and $10 million to redo the whole intersection on the transportation and improve pedestrian access. And as I mentioned, there's in the infrastructure bill that's currently being debated on Congress, there's an earmark for about half of that money to go towards Columbian Square that Congressman Lynch was able to include in the package. That leaves about half of it left to be spent. The administration, with a partnership with our state senator, has been very effective at getting state funding for some of these projects. So I hope that we can get some state funding to complete the project, but with the town also, I think, has a responsibility to make an investment here as well. So if there's a portion that remains uncovered by the state and the feds, I think we need to step up and make that investment. That being said, the main plan as it is right now is a transportation plan. It's a pedestrian plan. It's a vehicular plan. It doesn't necessarily specifically address some of the issues we've been talking about today. And that's where I think and it's not just for Columbian Square. It's for all of our squares, and it's all for all of our little centers of town that we have across Weymouth. We need to have a plan to make them attractive for businesses, for residents, for pedestrians, and not a piecemeal approach, because right now we get little bits here, little bits there, an event here, an event there. And I think we need to have a coordinated effort to make these centers of town as vibrant as they can possibly be. So getting that intersection corrected and up to date, so it's not a wild free for all like it is right now, is a great first step in that. And I think something that we have to work very hard to achieve, to make sure there's funding for that. But it doesn't stop there. It doesn't end there. It means we need to continue to invest in the beautification of those areas of Columbian Square, but all the squares in town, to make sure that they remain an attractive place for businesses and an attractive place for consumers to go to spend their money.
Thanks, John. And lastly, Ed, your thoughts on Columbian Square?
Thank you very much. So yes, focus on Columbian Square. Definitely, I could say, if everybody's been following, I know that out of all the people there, and I have the most experience. I've directed traffic in the middle of that Columbian Square, so I know how it goes. It definitely it needs the overhaul in the proper setting. The plan is in place. The Chauncey Street, they already revamped the Chauncey Street, redid the parking lot, did a great job. The lighting, the angle parking, made it the one way. They corrected a couple of parking spots that people had complained about and the businesses complained about, and they actually even pulled back the sidewalk to make the access and egress even better. So that's already done. Each phase and each step was being processed. The initial study, I think just the study alone was $425,000 just for the study, just on the revamping of Columbian Square. Yes, the funding was supposed to be appropriated from L-Star. Now that obviously the grants are, and hopefully we were able to secure with the help of Senator Lynch, and definitely I think that Weymouth will earmark some money towards that, what needs to be compensated, and it is a great idea to reach out to the South Shore Hospital for the pilot program to make sure that their contributions are also accepted due to their impact of the ambulance traffic and the patient ins and outs of the traffic. I believe that the Columbian Square is one of the most important projects that I'm going to, want to oversee as being on the council. I go through there 12 times a day. I'm right up the street. I believe in the businesses there. They're great. They're really into, obviously, the attraction of the people. Obviously, during COVID times, they had the outdoor seating. We got the grant, made it available. Had that. Now that has been taken down, and there's the revamping of the ins and outs of the restaurants in the businesses, it's coming back to life. So that alleviated several, I think it was 5 or 6 spots right there in Columbian Square. Everybody wants the primary parking. Yes, there's plenty of parking out back. I know not to go off focus, but Jackson Square, just for an FYI, there's a big parking lot out back, right behind the Justice Hardware and down. You have to walk through the alley. I know it's not that convenient, but it is a 2-minute walk. You walk down in between, and there's 50 or 60 parking spots out and back there. And just for the information, next time you go down you want to park there and walk up. But Jackson Square also allows people to park on the street, whereas in like Bicknell Square in North Weymouth, they had to they wouldn't let the parking there because everybody tries to get the 2-lane and then the merge going on 3A South, and the redo of that's Bicknell Square. Columbian Square, there is parking, on the sides, but then in the back, there is a big parking lot that they just did over. As in for the proposals of the landing with those buildings, I remember correctly, they were supposed to have the parking garages. And obviously due to the brook that runs underneath there and the engineering structures, they could not allow that to happen. So they had to, actually shorten the building and the height wise and bring it down because of the weight structure during the engineering. So that was part of the parking that would have been alleviated for the landing for that particular area. I know the apartment buildings at the top that between Braintree does have the parking for them underneath. And they did take over the parking lot in the back due to the size of the building. And then the train stations, they certainly have the drop-ons and drop-off. But the town administration, the mayor, and everybody has done the best they can at this point to alleviate the parking issue, and that is the problem and with the attraction to the business community. I think that by doing the right revamp of Columbian Square, it will come through, and they do have the plan, and just follow the plan and set in place and allocate the proper monies as they come to us as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. I think your dog has something to add to that there in the background.
Yeah.
So we're out of time. I want to thank everybody for joining us and taking some time out of your morning. As a reminder, Weymouth Chamber of Commerce will be posting this on our Facebook page, so we encourage you to share that with your followers. And before we end, again, I want to thank our power partner, Coastal Heritage Bank, for everything that they do for the Weymouth Chamber of Commerce. And thank you for participating, and good luck to everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dennis. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.